Hello, everyone. And as you know, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and I'm here in London, and I'm the host of Spiritual Infinity. And I'm now doing a series of talks with regards to men, because, as you know, I'm talking about people's spiritual journey, what they went through, and how they connect to their spirituality, because we're living in times where it's changing and we have become disconnected, and it's time we start to find ourselves. But in that spiritual journey, what has come to my attention is that men are going through a lot and we don't realize. Yeah, we've got some that are not very nice, but there are a lot of men that are suffering because as a child, we say, toughen up, you're a man, you don't cry. And they're trying to live up to these expectations, but they are human and they have feelings. And we do not nurture those feelings enough when they're young, so that as they grow up, they can be that strong man, but also gentle, that can understand what the feminine side, what we women also go through, because we try to knock out that gentleness from them, and we shouldn't. And it was also been brought to my attention that the suicidal rates for men is rising because they're having to hold in so much and they don't know how to handle it. And I think this subject needs to be brought out and talked about so that we can more understand, have compassion, and especially us women bringing up our male children, our boys, we don't say to them, "Oh, stop crying, you're a boy, toughen up, you men don't cry, you got to be a man." We need to stop that. And we need to let those boys cry and speak to them about what's hurting them and see how we can encourage them, just like the girls, to handle that pain or what to do. So, without much ado, my first guest today is Mark Stubbles, and he's in Sofia, Bulgaria, which is so nice. And he's a hypnotherapist and an author, and he's come on today to talk about his experiences, maybe what he's gone through, what he's experienced with other men. So, without more ado, Mark, welcome to Spiritual Infinity.
Wednesday.
Thank you for being here. And I know I'm really looking forward to hearing what you and my other guests, as I go through this series, to explore it and make me more aware and make others more aware of what men are going through and how we can help if we can. So, Mark, over to you.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I will start from the beginning. I grew up in quite a dysfunctional family, but I didn't realize it at the time because a child internalizes dysfunction. They think it means there's something wrong with them. That led to me developing all kinds of issues with anxiety. I developed a phobia of blushing. Ginger, so I blush very easily, and I became very anxious about my blushing. One of the symptoms of anxiety is blushing, so the more anxious I became, the more I blushed. It became a vicious cycle. And I suppose maybe I noticed it more than everyone else did, but the message from my family was really, just get on with it. I after school, I went to college. I got kicked out of college after about 2 years. I started work. I couldn't keep a job because of the anxiety and the blushing, and that obviously led to more abuse from my family. You can't even keep a job and blah, blah, blah. I was very insecure about my sexuality. So I got married very young, and relationships were a real issue for me. I I tend to dissociate around women. I don't want to go too much into the reason for that, but it stems from when I was a baby. So around women, I tend to dissociate. Sometimes I could get quite nasty. Like if a girl asked me out, I would make her cry. I was pretty bad. So I met the woman that I married, and she was the first woman that I felt comfortable with. So we got married when I was 21, which was too young, and I'd only known her about 6 months. So the relationship was turbulent. I had these narcissistic tendencies, just nasty feelings would come up in me, and I would have to unleash them somewhere. So usually I released them onto her. She wasn't perfect. But she was more functional than what I'd grown up around. She had a tendency to be violent. At first, I kind of excused it because I thought, well, I'm being a dick, so it's understandable. But as we got further into the relationship, it became less understandable, especially when we had a 3-year-old child in the house when there was one particularly violent incident. So yeah, I ended up leaving her, divorcing her. We went through the divorce courts, and like I say, I wasn't perfect, but neither was she. And when you're a woman and you go through the divorce courts, all you have to say is that you were abused in some way, and the court will just take your word for it. So we had that, and then she got 80% of the house. She wasn't from England, she was Slovakian, so she got 80% of the house on the basis that I said she wants to leave the country, and she said no, I don't want to leave the country. A year later, she decided she wanted to leave the country. So that led to a 5-year legal battle to try and stop her leaving the country with my child. We kept going backwards and forwards to court. On one occasion, the judge, I think he must have been drunk, accused me of filing my statement wrong. And I wanted to ask him how he thought I'd filed my statement wrong, considering I'd paid a solicitor to file it. How was I responsible? I got someone from the Law Society to do this for me and paid her a lot of money. And my barrister told me to shut up. So yeah, divorce courts they're not a nice place for men. Child custody battles aren't good for men. And yeah, there is an element of when I think I could say I was let down by the system. I used to see a child psychologist when I was up until I was about 11 because of my issues with dissociation. But because, the other kids at school were taking the piss out of me for not being there on Monday mornings, that I was going to special school or something, I said I didn't want to go anymore. So that was the end of that. And yeah, any questions?
Well, what I'm hearing is that the issues you had started from when you were very young within the family.
Yeah.
which led to you seeing a child psychologist up to the age of 11.
Hmm.
And these issues continued even into your adolescence, which resulted in you not feeling comfortable around women. So obviously there were issues in your family from the female side that made you anxious, and
Yeah.
which I'm going to talk about, which is fine, but okay. And which resulted that even in a teenager, you were aloof from women until you met a certain lady that you feel comfortable with and which you ended up marrying.
Hmm.
And I suppose like attracts like, because you had anger and things within you, she had anger and things within her, because the relationship was one of violence, physical abuse, and I suppose mental abuse as well.
Hmm.
Till that came about, that you really found that this it wasn't working, you weren't happy, and by this time you had a 3-year-old. You decided to divorce. So from that divorce, and again, I say again, in the courts, yes, if a woman says, oh, he did so and so, straight away, especially in England, it's generally on the woman's side, because men have this tendency of being violent towards women. And so many times, and I said earlier on that yes, men have this thing about violence, and then we look at, the man is a bully. But as I said, there's more to some of this that we're not listening to, and not every man is going to be violent. And if they're violent, why? This relates into something from childhood.
Hmm.
I suppose what we want to know is, from leaving that woman and now stepping out on your own, how did you stop and look at yourself and question yourself, and then go forward to try and resolve those issues in yourself?
Good question. I would just like to say I was mentally and emotionally abusive, never violent.
Okay.
She did the violence.
Okay, thank you.
Um, but yeah, I, like I said, partially because feelings came up within me, partially because I'd grown up in a mentally and emotionally abusive house.
Yeah.
So mental and emotional abuse was how I learned to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
How did I overcome it? During the divorce, well, during the custody battle,
Over
where
5 years.
yep, during the 5 years of never knowing when if I'd see my daughter again, I saw a counsellor, and it was useful because it enabled me to start to externalize some of the toxic shame, some of the dysfunction I'd internalized, but find I didn't get on particularly well with the counselor. Again, like you said, men kind of have this reputation as being violent or potentially violent. In terms of children, statistically, a child is actually 2 times safer with their father than their mother. Something like that. If you say that to a psychologist or social worker, they'll say, "Oh, it's because they have more opportunity," which might be a fair comment. But anyway, when I was seeing the counsellor, he said something to me which really got my back up. about my daughter spending time with me is like, oh, I think, it's good for your daughter to spend time with you as long as she feels safe. And I was like, well, why wouldn't she feel safe? Like, so yeah, I decided I didn't want to go back there anymore. And then probably about 10 years after that, I got into a relationship with someone else that I don't know how much I want to go into that. But she was.
Well,
she was
it's not really about the relationship. It's about what you went through and how you overcame it and how you worked through it. And probably she helped you to see things, and or she helped to bring out things within you that forced you to then step up and really look at yourself.
She did. I mean, I've had two kind of long-term relationships in my life. All of my other encounters with women have been quite brief. But the two long-term relationships have helped me understand a lot about myself. Yes, they've been very, very healing.
Mm-hmm.
But that relationship wasn't going very well anyway. And I finished with her and she ended up stalking me. And then, which is another, something else. If a man called the police and said, I'm being stalked, they'd laugh at him and put the phone down. Or at least like 10 years ago they would have done. I don't know about nowadays. But yeah, she ended up stalking me. And then I just questioned, like, how do I keep getting into these situations? I realized, the anxiety, I'm looking to these women to try and calm something in myself. So I thought, if I'm going to overcome this, I need to overcome the anxiety. And I was having quite I suppose you'd call it a psychotic episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I don't want to go and talk to someone because they'll lock me up. So I started listening to hypnotherapy recordings online, and they calmed me, they helped me to become more confident, helped me to overcome my phobia of blushing, helped me in all kinds of ways. And then maybe after a couple of years, talking about spirituality, I also listened to a lot of Alan Watts recordings. I don't know if you know of Alan Watts. Or...
I've heard about briefly.
Mm-hmm. So I did all of that, and at the time I'd reached a point where I didn't want to be in an office around people, so I was working online, very isolated, and that I wasn't happy with that. So I started thinking, well, what can I do? How can I overcome this? How can I get some kind of motivation to have a life again? And so I listened to a hypnosis recording and I thought, oh, I can do this. So that's what I did.
Can I ask you at this point, at what age were you when, I mean, you were 21 when you married, you've had this 5 years tug with your wife, you've got divorced, it took another 10 years before you got into another relationship, but that wasn't going well. So I'm looking at 35, and going into an office, working in an office, working amongst people, women, again, because you still carried these phobias, trying to get to the point where now you started to listen to things online? Or what, around what age would you say? About 35, 40?
35 is about right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 35, then trying to sort things out within yourself, because the second relationship brought things out which you realized that you had to overcome. And so you went to listen to things online, listen to spiritual things online as well, which you said also helped you,
Yeah.
looking at yourself and reconnecting. So from there, take it from there on.
Okay. So I did some hypnotherapy training. First, I started doing hypnotherapy training online. And after about 6 months, I decided I wanted to try in-person training. So I went and did some in-person training near where I lived. That was good. And all of this helped me get better, because when you do hypnotherapy training, you practice on one another. When you do life coaching, I did life coaching CBT courses, and there was Facebook groups where I could connect with people and get free therapy basically. So I did all of that, and I was a lot better. It wasn't until I suppose I was about 40 by this point. I was better, but I still had dissociation issues with women. And there was one particularly odd incident with a woman that worked in the pub. So I went to, actually, no, there was two particularly odd incidences. There was one woman that I got involved with through the hypnotherapy training. And that was just weird. I want to go into that. So I went back to the trainer of the course, and he suggested that I look at inner child work, that I do some inner child healing. And he suggested a couple of books by a man called John Bradshaw. So that was when I really started to progress in my life. Like I said, I'd become more confident, I'd gotten better, but it wasn't until I started doing the inner child healing that I actually started to realize the root of my problems and to externalize all of that toxic shame that I'd internalized from my childhood.
Okay, so the hypnotherapy online really helped you, and the spirituality, listening to things really helped. And then you started to join other groups, and then going into the inner child. Yes, because the problem started from your childhood, and the mental and emotional abuse that you held on to, which affected you deeply. And so going through that and taking on courses yourself to help yourself, to bring out and overcome those issues, are really what brought you along.
Absolutely.
And so looking at the road you've taken and looking what you've gone through,
Mm-hmm.
how would you see yourself, or how do you see yourself today? And how have you then used what you've known to help others? And what have you seen in others with regards to that?
How do I view myself today? I view myself as confident. I give talks, do workshops to tens of people at a time which I would never have been able to do before. I would never have been able to speak publicly up until 8 years ago. So my confidence has improved there. I see myself as emotionally well regulated. I don't know. The last woman I lived with said I was the most masculine man she'd ever met. So I don't know if that's I put that down to inner child
Well,
work.
well, I would say if you said the most masculine, be a woman's man, that as a man you stand up and you're there for, I suppose, for her, and that she felt comfortable with. She felt as though she has a man in her life that is a man. So when you see where you're coming from, where the mental and emotional abuse, which made you afraid of women, in your teens, afraid and standing away from women, and then getting married to a woman that you were the only woman you found comfortable with because you'd had issues. And here today, a woman is saying, God, you're the most masculine man. And to me, that is a man who knows how to treat a woman, who knows how a man should be. And unfortunately, many of us, when we're meeting men or the male, and sometimes we do question, do they know what it is to be a man and how a woman should be treated? So for her to say you're the most masculine, it may be I say a compliment. So you've worked yourself and you've come a long way to be that person.
Absolutely.
So using your hypnotherapy, and you say now that you give talks, and I take it you're giving talks, is it just to males or male to female?
Males and females.
And it is about those issues that that can happen within us and how it can be overcome.
Yeah, I focus heavily on the inner child. I see the inner child as the root of all issues. Most people don't want to go there because they feel it's about blaming parents or having a victim mentality. It's not about blaming your parents. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they have, and hurt people. So it's not about blame at all. It's not about victim mentality either. It's about taking ownership of what's happened to you and dealing with it. So yeah, inner child work is kind of very much focus of what I do. I also help people with PTSD. I find helping people with PTSD very rewarding.
Right, let me stop you there. What is PTSD?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, I know, but sometimes people listening may not know.
And I'm glad you asked me what PTSD is, because most people have CPTSD and they don't even know it. CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So PTSD is generally considered as being caused by a one-off activating event, whereas CPTSD is lots of little events that build up over time. It's generally suffered by prisoners of war and children who grow up in dysfunctional families. Some estimates say that 80% of people grow up with some form of dysfunction. So
the CPSD, yeah, which that was probably the CPSDs, but the one you probably had through childhood because of how you grew up, and so because of what you've gone through, and because of what you've studied, and because of all the things that have happened, it puts you in good stead to understand and listen to others. and be able to see where they're coming from and understand the anxiety and the trauma that they're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Empathize.
So now, as I say, you do a lot of inner child work, a lot of the trauma. Do you do workshops, anything like that?
I do. I haven't been doing the workshops as much as I used to. My next workshop is scheduled for September, and that's going to be a 3-hour inner child workshop. You can find that on Eventbrite and my website.
Okay. And what is your website, Mark? If you can say it so our viewers can know.
markstubbles.com.
That's it. Very easy. All one word, markstubbles.com. And you're going to be having a workshop in September.
Yes.
To do with the inner child. Now, do you also work with individuals?
I do. Absolutely.
And how do they connect? Do they connect on your same markstubbles.com? They can connect with you through that?
Yeah, they can find me at markstubbles.com. They can also find me on YouTube. They just search my name, Mark Stubbles. Those are the two best places to find me.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I also said you're not only a hypnotherapist, but you're an author.
Yes, I am.
So let's hear about those books. Where can we find them? What are they about?
Well, they're all listed on Amazon. Some of them are listed on my website. One of my books is Hypnotic Conversations, which is about using hypnotic language conversationally. The most recent one is Hypnotic Language for Positive Parenting, because, again, many parents, they're going to parent the way they were parented, and many parents resort to because I said so parenting and authoritarian parenting, which is going to it's going to break a child's will. It's going to create toxic shame. It's going to create insecurities within them. So using hypnotic language, you still get probably better results, but your child doesn't grow up with issues. So that's
I understand when you say hypnotic language, because it has been known that if you say things in a certain way over and over again, you can say it in this way, you can say it in that way, you can say it in that way, but it's the same thing. It's actually reinforcing what you're trying to say. And that in itself is hypnotic, because it's done in a way to embed it into your mind, which I think.
Yeah, kind of, but also like things like negative suggestions. Like if you say to a child, don't jump on the bed, they have to picture jumping on the bed to know what you're telling them not to do. So the result is going to be that they jump on the bed. Like if I say, don't think of a purple aeroplane, you have to picture a purple aeroplane so that you know what not to think about. So yeah, things like that, language hacks,
and probably instead of saying don't jump on the bed, saying don't you think it would be better if you did this, because when you do this, this is what happens.
Absolutely, that's correct. Yes.
Explain what happens when you do that, so it would be better that they don't do that, so they understand the consequences in a good way, in a positive way, rather than, as you say, don't jump on the bed. You automatically think jumping on the bed. Whereas you say, you know, when you jump on the bed, you do this to the springs and you do that, and so it's a different way of saying don't do it because this is the reason why, which is much better. But
absolutely.
Just to twig on something that you said earlier that I wanted to bring up and I went past, is when you said that it's people don't like to talk about it or think about it, and this causes a lot. This causes problems within us because instead of going back to recognize what's happened to us, that wasn't very nice, we tend to shut it away, and by shutting it away, we're not dealing with it. And and as quite rightly you said, it's not about blame, and it's not about being playing the victim mentality, because your parents or whoever has done these things to you in your childhood that's caused um, you to be the way you are as time's gone on, they've been hurt themselves, and we've seen that time and heard that time and time again. So they are only doing to you what was done to them, and so they think this is normal when it's not normal. And therefore, when you do grow up and then you look back, it's not about being angry, it's about realizing they too have been hurt and they didn't know any better. And when you realize that, and it's about knowing what happened to you, but you can change that so it doesn't become a generational situation, and you don't carry it on generation after generation.
Yep, very true.
Yeah. So
Just on shutting it away, I want to say that you can never shut it away because it'll always come up. It'll create what Carl Jung called the shadow.
yeah,
It will create things that you can't see you're doing, but everyone else can.
yes,
It'll create. You need to suppress it. So you can either do that by being narcissistic or through addictions, etc.
yeah, yes, you're right. You don't shut it away, it hides, and it will rear its head in some form somewhere along the line. And it is about when we do things that are not very nice, or we are acting a way that is causing us pain and causing others pain, is to sit back quietly and say, what is it that I have to change? What is it that I need to dig up, look out, and let go and recognize, rather than just keep hiding away from it? Mark, this has been, as I said, doing this series, and it's a series which I hope everybody will follow, look at, understand, and it'll bring out a lot of understanding. And unfortunately, as you said, when we go to courts, yes, it is on the women's favour, and sometimes that's not fair.
It's not.
It's not. And it brings out more emotional anger within you. But until we find a way where people can ask the right questions, to get the truth out before they can see things. Mark, before I say thank you for your time, is there a gold nugget or two you can leave with the viewers that may help them in their struggle, in their challenges?
Oh, that's a good question. Something that I always say is what resists not only persists, but becomes stronger. So if you're dealing with anxiety or whatever you're dealing with, the more you try and resist it and suppress it, the worse it's going to get. It's like holding a beach ball under the water. When you let it go, it shoots up into the air. It's like that with anything you're trying to suppress or hide.
Yeah.
So that is my nugget.
what 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 resists always persists.
What resists not only persists but becomes stronger.
What resists always persists but becomes stronger. Yes, very true. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. And you're in Bulgaria. What's the weather like in Bulgaria at the moment?
It's a little bit cooler than Britain. I think it's about 25 degrees. But I'm in the mountains, so.
Oh, so you got lovely views.
Yep, I'm about 1,000 meters above sea level. There's still snow on some of the mountains.
Oh, but fresh air, cleaner
Mhm.
air, and lovely vibration.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, thank you so much for joining me today, and all those who have joined us. I hope you've been able to glean something from Mark, which I'm sure you have, to understand what men go through. And it's not always a case where they're just violent like that. It's like everybody else. It's not just men; it's women as well. You know, it's what happens in our childhood affects us. And men, muscular, they can do things in a different way, but they too are suffering. So they too also need help and need a voice. So with those around us, the masculine, especially women and even you, men themselves, they don't always want to talk what's going on because, oh, macho, men don't talk. They need to. And we need to give them the space to do that. So from me, Zenzi Sewa in London and Mark in Bulgaria, bye for now. See you
Thanks
all
for
again.
joining.
Bye bye.
Bye.